I did a pretty big harvest of my herbs that I have growing out in the backyard. I have, I think, 5 different little pots outside. I can add a few clips now. So out back on my deck, I just have a few pots with some herbs and some flowers mixed in. I also have a long flower box with kale. So starting over here, I do have some rosemary. It is perennial rosemary. At this point, it is, I think, 3 years old, but I take it in the winter. This one is the one that is struggling a little bit. It's starting to finally put on some new growth, so I'm happy about that. Here is some sweet basil. I started from seed. It's the only one that survived, and it looks terrible. I should probably cut that down a little bit. I do need to fertilize it a little bit more. Maybe that'll help. But yeah, so because I had a hard time with my basil, I ended up by buying some. So there's some really nice Genovese basil here. I have just that one pot. And then next to it, I have some dianthus, and this is where I have my parsley. Not doing too well. You know, it's just not growing as big as I would expect, but you know, that's okay. I'm getting a little bit out of it. And then up here, I have a little bit of a mix. I have obviously some marigolds, and I have some petunias, but then I also have some thyme, and I have some rosemary that I just purchased this year from Azure Standard. In this planter, I do have some cilantro that bolted, so unfortunately, but it has some really delicate flowers, so it's really pretty. And it was a volunteer, so you know, can't be mad at that. In another bin with some banana peppers, you can see one here, I have at the base some hot and spicy oregano. These are amazing. It's such a delicious herb. If you're not a huge fan of oregano or think it's too strong, give this one a try. It's really good. In this planter with my petunias, I have some basil, and this is where the majority of my dill can be found, and it's doing really well. It loves it in here, so I have a lot of growth. So I'm excited with these plants. It's looking really pretty. Now this here is my garden sage. This plant is doing phenomenal. It is so healthy and huge. It's actually flowering a little bit. So I got 3 spikes that I guess I should probably have taken off, but that's okay. This is year number 5. I used to have hot and spicy oregano at the base of this container, but this past year was the first year it did not come up. So I'm really excited to have this sage. It is delicious, and I dry a whole bunch, and it lasts well over a year. This container that it's planted in, yep, it is an old shop vac of my husband's. The motor died, and you know what? It holds dirt. So made a great container, and clearly this sage is extremely happy here. So the thing about growing herbs is that they take up a very small space in your yard. They add so much flavor to your food, and you don't even need a yard. You know, you just need a couple of pots on a deck or on a balcony, and they also don't require a lot of time. So it's really nice to be able to still grow something fresh and have a small garden, right? That makes, you know, at least it makes me happy to be able to grow a little bit of something, even if I have a very busy schedule. You know, herbs are one of those things that just are simple and easy. The thing about herbs also is that they really like to be trimmed. And the more you cut, the stronger the plant gets and the more it tries to grow. And so it's really nice because you can then take all those trimmings and dry them and use them throughout the year if you grow enough. And also, Some herbs are perennial. So if you think about rosemary, you can buy a perennial rosemary so that you can actually take it indoors in the winter. And that is what I do. This past year is the third year on my rosemary, and it's struggling a little bit. So I did purchase a new one this year. I didn't do well with my seeds, so I ended up by purchasing some new. So what I do is I rinse them off in my salad spinner, and then I put them in this dehydrator. This dehydrator is pretty old. I think we've had it for about 8 years. The heat and the hot air flow from the bottom through the trays to the top. And what I've noticed over time is that the bottom trays will often get dry before the top trays. And so to compensate, because of the airflow, I actually, at about 12 to 18 hours, will flip these trays so that the top is on the bottom and the bottom is on the top. And then the middle is typically okay. And for the second half of the drying session, I will dry them in that order. Now, there are versions of dehydrators that actually have the fan in the back, so then they blow evenly over the trays, and so you don't have to mess with the order of the trays. But I don't have to buy a new one because this one works just fine. So when the day that this one, I plug it in and it doesn't work, that's when I will replace it with one of those. So if you're looking for one, just know that the fan in the back is probably better. You won't have to worry about reorganizing your trays, and it's just makes it dry a lot quicker. Here's what I've got in the dehydrator today. So I have some thyme and a very small amount of parsley. For some reason, my parsley is on the struggle bus this year. Here is some cilantro and a little bit of that rosemary. I have some basil, another layer of basil, and I have some dill, followed by sage. There's a little bit more sage. And then finally on the bottom, I have my hot and spicy oregano, which is really hard to find. I couldn't find any seeds this year. And typically I have some hot and spicy oregano that grew in the same container as my sage. But this year, unfortunately, it didn't come back. So I ended up by buying 3 hot and spicy oregano plants from Burpee. They sell the actual plant starts, and they were reasonably priced, so I went ahead and purchased those. Now, this dehydrator, for what I use it, I usually set it for at least 24 hours, and then the temperature by default on this device is 95. I do put it up to 104. And so in about 12 hours or so, I will flip these layers around, and then once they're dry fully, I will place them into a parchment paper and get rid of the hard stems that are there and crinkle them up and put them in my spice jars. So now these have been drying for about 24 hours, a little bit over. So what I'm going to do is I'll take each of these layers, put them on a piece of parchment, and just crunch. That's it. What is nice about the parchment paper is then, well, first of all, I can reuse it, but then second of all, it also allows me to just fold it so I can slip it right into my mason jar. I do try to remove like these thick stems like that, because even if you use a mortar and pestle, you're not going to grind those down. So I try and pick out most of them, and I just kind of put them aside. Ideally, I did actually take out a lot of these before they were dried, but there's always a few that I don't get. So Yep, so that's it. So this is what I'm going to do. I will pack these into the mason jar. Throughout the summer, I'll be harvesting more and make sure I fill that mason jar, and that will allow me to have the dried herbs for an entire year. And here's the basil. So I think most of the larger stems are gone. Now if you start crunching them and you come across one that's, you know, maybe a larger leaf that's not exactly dry, like this one's not crunching, I'm not going to keep, because it's not dry. And everything else dried fairly well, so I'm not gonna keep that. And so that's what I have for my basil. So this will be really good for this. By the end of the summer, I will have this overly full. And that's it. That's how I dry all my herbs.